OnEducation is sponsored by Participate, a community learning platform where the world learns together. Later in the episode, we'll hear about one of Participate's communities, Teach the Global Goals, and how you can get involved in its free community learning opportunities with educators around the world.
I'll tell you, that's the political action campaign that needs to happen.
Move to North Dakota.
Getting Californians and New Yorkers to move
Minnesotans too.
to the flyover states. Move to the flyover states. You'll change the world if you move to the flyover states. Welcome to OnEducation, part of the On Podcast Media Network. My name is Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glen Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We will debate whether we should pay our student teachers, whether a large portion of teachers work second jobs during the summer, and our guest this week is rapper and educator Chad Harper.
But let's talk about video games first.
We always have to begin with
I'll tell you, the second half of this podcast is super serious.
It's very serious and kind of... I'm super pumped that we had Chad on the podcast, and the work that he's doing is amazing, and everybody should stick around and make sure you listen to that interview. But also, just what we discussed is so grim, and so I don't know of a way out of it. Like, and I know that smarter people than me have, you know, some ideas about how do we get past this, but it to me just feels like it's perpetual, and it's disgusting. It's a bad part of what the United States continues to do. So you guys will have to continue to listen to this because
way to set the table for that.
Sorry.
Glenn.
Yes. But first, let's talk about Ultimate Game Pass on the Xbox.
So did you just subscribe to the Xbox version? Because there's like an Xbox PC version or whatever.
Yeah. So if everybody doesn't know this, Xbox has a service, Xbox Live. If you want to go ahead and play Xbox with someone else, games, you can purchase something called Xbox Live, and it's been in existence since Xbox, the original even had it. Yep. And anyway, you also get some free games each month, but they're not always very good. They have been, on and off, but you do get a free game. I think now they even give 2 free games per month. But now there's this service, and it kind of makes me think, because we've had this conversation before about subscription services. And Xbox has created something called the Ultimate Game Pass. And this is the one that you're describing is the one that I purchased, which is you have a library, let's call it a Netflix library of games. Yes. For your Xbox, but because it's Microsoft, if you have a PC computer, which I do, there's another library, which some of them are crossover, so they're the same games, but some of them are exclusive just to the PC version.
Yeah, that's right.
Of games that you can download and play on your PC computer, even while your kids, which my kids will be, playing on the Xbox in the other room. Yeah. So I bought this Game Pass, and I think it's the first 3 months. The reason why I did it is because the first 3 months, the whole summer, it's $3, or it's $1 actually. They did it at $1.
Sounds like a good deal.
Yeah, and then after that, it's a $15 charge. So the question for me is going to be, is it going to be worth it? Like, is $15? Because if you guys don't know, people that are out there that don't play video games, don't tell my wife this. Games are super expensive nowadays.
Unbelievably expensive in Canada. $80, $80 for a new game.
It's $60 plus in the United States, $80 Canadian.
Yep.
And
it's
that's a lot of money for one game. And if you buy something, that's what I was thinking about, which I've done before. You buy something and you actually don't end up playing a lot of it because it had more hype, or it just wasn't you were just not into it. Then you have that, you chucked out that money and you're like, the
story of my video game library right there. That's what you just did.
So $15 per month may seem like a lot. And it is a lot. But if you think about $60 games and how many times you purchase those, not all of them are $60, but any real comes from the big studios. What do they call those, Mike? Like AAA studios or something?
AAAs, yep.
AAA studios, basically big time games.
Yep.
Even the big time sports games, when they come out, they're $60. And some of them even have other, means of collecting money somewhere or another.
Yeah,
and
microtransactions.
Exactly. So they're pulling money from you at other times. So if you could find a way to only spend $15 per month over, a period of time, it seems like that's possible, that they could be a good deal. And if you're a big video game person, then you know that there's this company called Bethesda. And Microsoft and Bethesda are now one or something, right, Mike? They bought them or something? Yeah.
Something like that.
Yes. And so all of those games and anything that Bethesda ends up developing is going to be part of this Ultimate Game Pass, supposedly. We're going to be able to get those games first and be able to play them. Plus, you can play all of their amazing games that they've developed in the past anytime you want. You can download any of the versions.
This is like the best commercial for Xbox Game Pass.
I don't know.
They should be. I don't know. I don't think we should talk anymore about them unless they give us some money. So I'm looking at my screen right now. First off, this is the best deal in gaming, bar none.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the games that are on this are some of the best games ever. In fact, I'm looking at. They just released Final Fantasy 10/10. Sorry, what is it called? 10 and 10-2 for PC. Final Fantasy 10 is my favorite Final Fantasy. If you can actually pay a little add-on fee to actually also get the EA Play subscription.
Yeah.
For another couple bucks, and that gives you access to things like FIFA 21. Yeah. Need for Speed. All the Battlefield games, Madden, Crisis, all the Dragon Age games, all the Dead Space games. Like, that is an awesome deal in and of itself. But then the Bethesda thing is like game changing, because Bethesda, if you don't know, is Fallout. So all the Fallout games, all of the Elder Scrolls games, which are like
tons of hours.
Like Skyrim is generally considered, if not the greatest game of all time. It's in the top 5 of almost every list. So there's Skyrim, which is like thousands of hours of potential gameplay just in that one game. There's Doom, Dishonored. These are all Bethesda games. So there's like, I mean, just insane amounts of content in this package. Age of Empires I'm looking at, which is like my OG game from when I was a teenager. Age of Empires
game
1
was awesome back in the day.
It was awesome.
I kind of want to play it. I remember that.
Age of Empires is dope, man. It's such a good game. So is the Xbox Ultimate Game Pass worth it? Yeah, 100%. Actually, Flight Simulator, the newest Flight Simulator is on it as well.
Yeah.
Which is wild. I have, what do I have installed from it right now? I have Forza Motorsport 7 installed. I have Forza Horizon 4 installed, and Dragon Quest Builders 2 installed from that collection, from that subscription service.
Yeah.
It's pretty great, man.
Yeah.
Especially for chronic, like, game switchers and people who like will play for a couple days and then stop and play something else, variety streamers or whatever. So it's amazing. I'm playing a lot of Final Fantasy 14, the online, the MMO version of Final Fantasy. And I've been playing that a lot the last week or so, and it's been a lot of fun.
I bet.
We should actually connect, because we can play together some of these other
for
games.
Sure.
Now that you have that, and there's tons of games there. So
all right, you guys know what we'll be doing this summer.
I mean, like, they don't know already.
I know,
but whatever. So we got a couple interesting conversation topics that have come up over the last week, and this first one is pretty interesting, and it actually elicited a really cool conversation in the fabled OnEducation Twitter DM room that you guys can't see, but is a frolicking great time of conversation. It's a tweet from Alice Keeler. Student teachers should be paid at least enough to pay rent. You can't expect people to not be paid for a semester and think they can pay their bills. How many people just do not go into teaching because they cannot afford to do free student teaching? Solid point, Alice. What do you think?
It's a great point. We all brought different perspectives because we all, obviously, the group that we have is a different generational even group. Like me and you, obviously, we're of the same age range.
But we didn't go to school at the same time. And not even close.
Exactly, and that's an interesting point too, because when I was in school to become a teacher, and when I student taught, I was only 21.
Yeah.
So I was still, whatever, just barely coming through college, barely after high school. Anyway, I was thinking about this and thinking about the semester when I student taught, and my situation and my perspective was definitely different than other people, as we were doing it. And basically what it was I said, I couldn't have afforded that. I didn't afford it. I got student loans, and during student teaching, I paid for my tuition and my rent for my cruddy room that I rented from a friend. I rented a room in his house with the money that I got from the student loan refund. And that's the way I paid for that thing. And that's how that semester went.
You had to go into catastrophic amounts of debt to go to school.
So you went into massive amounts of debt because then you wanted to be able to complete what you needed to complete. Some other people had different situations as far as how it went. Yours was even different, right, Mike? Because you were. It was later in your life too.
Yeah, I was in my early 30s when I went back to school, and I worked, 20 to 35 hours a week. Like during the holiday season, I was working 35, 40 hours a week,
full time. Yeah.
And especially during that Christmas break time, I was working, 10-hour days because I worked retail. And so I worked between, especially at the end, my last 2 years of my Bachelor of Arts and my 1 year of my Bachelor of Education. Remember in Ontario, when I went to school, you had to go to school for 5 years to become a teacher, 4 years for an undergrad, and then 1 year for your Bachelor of Education. Now you actually have to do it for 6.
Wow.
So you have to take your Bachelor of Education for 2 years now. So actually this situation is even worse for people now than it was for me. But I worked almost full time and went to school and was lucky, that we lived with my in-laws, with Cheryl's parents, and Cheryl was teaching full time, but we still, so that was the situation. Now it's obvious that not everyone's the same. Not everyone's home situation is the same.
No.
And I truly believe we are losing people because they can't afford to go to school to become a teacher.
Yeah.
That's got to be the truth. It's got to be a reality. I guess the arguments, there are some solid arguments going the other way, why you would not agree to this. I mean, the strongest one, I guess, is that you're paying for school anyways, right? Like you were paying, for your books and your classes and whatever. And this is just you going somewhere else to go to school, but the counter argument, I guess, is that in a lot of those cases, it's not local anymore. You have to drive to the school that you're going to. You're spending money for gas. You're going every day, right? You have to pack a lunch. Like there's a lot of things that, if you were in a dorm or on a residence at the university that you were going to school at, and you could just like roll out in your pajamas and go to class.
Yes.
And you had a meal plan and
that's true.
All of this stuff, right?
Exactly.
And you weren't spending money on gas and all of that stuff.
No.
So this is a really complicated
for sure
issue. Yeah.
There are some states too. We found out our circumstance, my wife and I, our first jobs, we graduated from school in 1998 from Alamosa, Colorado, in a state college called Adams State College. And we decided to move to California. I don't know why. We just and we got teaching jobs there. And in California, and I guess it's still the current system, according to Marcia Carrillo, who responded to Alice, or Alice subtweeted her there, talked about that in California, they hire what they call 50% interns. And what it really means is this, everybody, if you don't know this, at least in our experience, and that was a long time ago now, we went there and we already had done student teaching, Mike. And in the United States, when they have salary grids, they pay, there's basically steps and lanes. So instead of getting paid on step 1, if you had done your student teaching, you actually moved up to step 2. And they paid basically people who were still completing their student teaching as they worked, because they could get a job. They basically graduated, let's call it in quotations, graduated, and they could work in the school district, right? As a live teacher, get paid, and then complete their student teaching at the same time. So it was
right.
It is an idea, and I think it might be the best way to go ahead and go about this is basically make a step 0 or a step 1 only student teachers basically start off at in their first semester. They're still being observed by the college. They're still doing some different things, but they're actually hired. And then it would actually be a great mentorship program. It's associated with both the school district and the university, and kind of as a team, we're working together to build up these candidates and make them great teachers. And then the second semester, let's call it, the second half of the year, they complete the year as a regular teacher, and then, they go on and do that. I'm sure there's some obstacles to that because all of our states have to be different than each other, because that's how we do it in the United States. We just all have to have our own licenses for each state. We can't just share one license.
Glenn, nothing can be nationalized because that's communist, and you can't let the commies can't let the commies take over the country. You need to take the power back, Glenn.
You couldn't agree on a national teacher license because that would be too
socialism.
Yes, socialistic. But in this case, I could see something like this really working out for a variety of things. Both the universities it would work well for. Obviously, the student teachers could get paid right away. My God, those first paychecks. I was speaking to someone, because you know this, Mike. Again, you're kind of my age. That when we got our first jobs, do you remember when we used to actually get physical paychecks?
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, those physical paychecks, it was like a big deal to take that dang thing to the bank. And the first times you were actually getting any kind of significant amount of money, you were like, God, I'm rich. You're like, oh, man.
So funny related to that is that, it hasn't been too long since I got a physical check.
Really?
Because at my school that I taught at, they paid me once a month at the end of the month by check. It was awful.
It's terrible.
But what was really funny is, so at the on the last day of school, so in June, not only did we get our last month's pay, but we got a bonus.
Ooh.
So we got a bonus, and it was fairly substantial. It was, so my final check, especially in my last couple of years when I was teaching, was 5 figures, low five figures. So that makes sense. That's what we're talking about.
That's a big
going
check.
to it's like you're shaking your hands when you're handing it to them, and you're like, oh my God, this amount of money. Yeah, no, I know it exactly what that's like. Hey, so listen, just so we're perfectly clear, the socialist in me says this is my official position, and that's that no one should be denied any level of education simply because they cannot afford it.
Agreed.
We recognize that everyone has different skills and that everyone is capable of doing different things and at different levels. Not everyone is cut out to be a doctor or a lawyer or a surgeon or an astronaut, but you should be fully capable. You should be fully eligible to do anything that your skills equip you to do without the hindrance of finances stopping you from doing that. That is my official position on this. And so, any way that makes that happen, is good in my books. And if that means that we pay interns to be interns, then we should pay interns to be interns if that is the only way it gets them through the door to become a teacher and, gives them that opportunity. So,
yeah, talking about pay and not getting paid enough, and people then at the, when you got that final paycheck, you were like, should I work during the summer? I think a lot of teachers contemplate that decision, whether one or both spouses, if they both are teachers, let's say, would take on an extra job to go ahead and earn some money, during the summer. We've talked about that on different topics, right? Different opportunities that are out there and whatever might be. Nicholas Ferroni was subtweeted by someone that's not one of my favorite people, Matt Ryan. And he basically was subtweeting him about, because Nicholas Ferroni sometimes puts on some things that he's been wrong about some things. Some people hate him.
He hasn't fully thought through the process by which a dude with 100,000 followers, does when you tweet something. That's all. And you know what? I like him, and I know that he makes mistakes. All of us do on social media. Sometimes he makes some huge mistakes, and sometimes he says some things that come off really not well. Let's just say. Yeah. Anyway, he wrote here, basically his tweet was a reminder that most teachers don't have the summer off, and it is not paid and it is not a paid vacation. One part of that tweet for sure is 100% correct. It's not a paid vacation. We all know that as educators, and I hate to justify that. It's called, we continue to get paid during the summer. It's prorated.
Because the school district actually earns the interest on the money that should be ours. States, though, like California and some other school districts, maybe even some other states, have negotiated a 10-month paying period so that the teacher can decide what to do with that money, and they can invest it and earn the interest on it versus the school district doing that. Basically, it's just a matter of who gets to hold the money that is already ours. We've earned the money. It just distributed at us. They're trickling it out for us. A little bit each month, sometimes 2 times a month, to be able to go ahead and get us through the summer. But it's our money. He is right about that. Now, he says most teachers don't have the summer off. And this guy, Matt Ryan, he says this is factually incorrect. He says about 20% is the correct number. Here's my take on this. Whether it's 20% or most teachers, or somewhere in between, which I think the number is probably somewhere in between those two, it sucks so bad that the profession doesn't pay enough for someone to go ahead and have that time if they want to go ahead and have that time. They earn the money throughout those, the 9-month period or the 10-month period. And then this happens to be the way that the schedules work, as far as the way that the calendars work, as far as in schools. It's just disgusting that is the case. And we've talked about it, that in many states it is. It may not be where Matt Ryan is actually at, and he's trying to call out, or where Nicholas works. I think he's in the New York City area. I think he lives in, where people maybe make quite a bit of money, but it's also super expensive to live there, just like California. You could see a salary that's maybe close to 6 figures, but my God, 6 figures in California is not that much.
You could barely, you're like poverty level in San Francisco.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, depending upon where you live, it's not a lot. You're having to make hard decisions. Let's just put it that way. Yeah. So it does differ, and we already know that in some states they just pay horribly. And so there are teachers that are going out there and taking on second jobs, like you just talked about, Mike, whether it be in retail or in, something else completely different outside of teaching. Or remember, we were talking about it just a few weeks ago, summer school. Many teachers take that on and be like, okay, I could do summer school, or I can do this other things, and then I can go ahead and earn that little bit more of money, as we talked about, to be able to pay the mortgages or the car payments or whatever else that you need to go ahead and do, or food, be able to go ahead and do that. So what do you think as far as the summer school thing or the summer work thing?
I mean, it's this guy in particular, this Matthew Ryan dude, just loves to argue like it's semantics that he loves to argue. He likes to get people going with things that are factually incorrect. Yes. Like, he's right. Good for you, Matthew. You're actually right. It is factually incorrect. That because the key word there is most, right? Most teachers do not work multiple jobs. Good job, Matthew. You're bang on. You nailed this tweet. And I don't know, or frankly, I'm not going to bother looking it up, but if it's 20%, it's probably around, that feels normal-ish. But how much does a 10-year teacher in Minnesota make, for example? Do you have a sense?
Yeah, I would say probably average salary is in the, I'm going to say 45 to 50,000 range.
For 10 years teaching?
Or 10-year teacher?
Yeah, 10 years teaching. How much have you made? How much would you make a year?
About 50,000.
Really?
At the most.
That's a little bit less than what I was thinking.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of some salary grids, depending upon if you live in the Twin Cities area,
sure,
you might make. I've seen some salary grids that maybe go in the 80s and maybe even in the 90s, but most of us that live in the rural areas, it's somewhere maxes out in the mid to high 70s, somewhere in there.
So an Ontario teacher maxes out at just over $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
10 years at full grid, by taking extra courses and stuff, maxes out at around $102,000 a year.
And most of our grids don't go beyond 10 years. That's what I was. So
your
and
bottom
it's
the same
10.
in Ontario. I think it's 10 in Ontario as well. Yeah. But here's the thing. In Florida, the great state of Florida. I love Florida. I don't. 10-year teacher probably makes like $45,000 a year, barely a real salary. And so of course, if you're a Florida teacher, in one of these districts that pays you virtually nothing, of course you need to go get a job in the summer.
Have to.
Because in some cases, especially if you're really good at car sales or commission thing, it's theoretically in 2 months you can make almost as much as you make teaching the other 10 months of the year. I mean, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. So, Matthew Ryan loves semantics. And this tweet is right up his wheelhouse. So good job, dude. But the fact is that any teacher that has to work a second job is an absolute crime. Teachers are professionals. Teachers go to school for a professional amount of time, similar to a lot of other professions that could be making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
Agreed.
Tradespeople who could start their own plumbing business and be millionaires. Because listen, if you want to make a ton of money, go do a trade, for God's sakes, right now. Teachers deserve to be paid like kings and queens, and schools should be palaces. That is like that. My opinion.
I like that a lot.
And rant. And, so with that, by the way, awesome segue going into this. We shouldn't, I guess the first rule of segues is to not talk about the segues, but we break that rule all the time.
Oh yeah.
Good job. And I will now segue to telling you that when we come back, we'll be talking to Chad Harper. So stay with us.
It is like a spider web. These diverse, interconnected spaces help and inspire us to understand, empathize, and take local action in our schools.
That's Yajaira Guedes, a facilitator within the Teach the Global Goals community on Participate. The community is home to hundreds of resources, courses, and educators around the world, collaborating on how to bring the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals into the classroom.
With our students, and as a collective to be a powerful force to achieve the vision of a more peaceful, healthy, and equitable world.
We'll hear more later in the episode from another community facilitator on why you should get involved.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Our guest, known by the stage name the Brooklyn Globetrotter, is an American rapper, songwriter, businessman, educator, and humanitarian. He was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and has been a resident of Brooklyn, New York for over 20 years. Welcome to the podcast, Chad Harper.
Hello, everyone. How you doing?
Chad, I spent a few hours today going back through a lot of your content. First things first, you've been doing this a long time. You've been at this for years. But I think that there's a thread of commonality in everything that I saw today, and that's that you're constantly trying to bring people together for a cause. I saw you doing dance lessons. I saw you hosting or producing community shows and community content, concerts, working with kids, and lately a project surrounding the issue of mass incarceration, which we're going to get to in a minute. So I guess my question is, you've been doing this for almost a decade, man. What drives you to keep doing work like this?
Oh, man. I've Hip Hop Saves Life started in 2006, and we really got moving like 2012. And since then, it's been nonstop. And I would say the driving force would have to be my grandmother. She passed a long time ago. But her house, which I lived in from 3rd grade to 9th grade with my parents, her house was like the neighborhood community center. So she had daycare in the morning and she had daycare in the evening for all the parents on our street and in our neighborhood who had to work early or work late. So my house was essentially like the hangout spot, the community center. Nice. We played basketball, football, tag. I mean, every day there's a dozen to 15, maybe 20 kids at the house. And I just grew up in that communal environment. And it was great. It was great to have your house be the hangout spot every day, Yeah. So just that kind of sense of community that my grandmother brought to our neighborhood, it's just rooted in me. That's just what it is.
Tell us more about the Hip Hop Saves Lives organization. You said it started in 2006. I mean, that's 17 years going now. Mm-hmm. And tell us, where are you at now with that?
Well, we started initially, we were producing. I was actually volunteering for an organization called Charity Water, and they did these elaborate cocktail parties in New York City to raise money for clean water wells in Africa. So I was volunteering for them. Decided to use my hip hop skills to kind of write and record a song celebrating them as an organization, as well as putting all the information that they would share with the attendees to their events to help them donate for clean water. And that was kind of the true birth of Hip Hop Saves Lives. With that song, we played it at events all across New York City. We went to Sundance Film Festival. We went to produce events in Miami, and people just loved the song. And I remember being in Sundance, and we sold like couple hundred copies of the CD, in one night. I was like, wow, hip hop is saving lives. And that's where the name came from. After that, I was doing events in New York City, trying to raise money for water wells. That event production or concert kind of production kind of really wasn't my thing. So I kind of eventually ended up creating a curriculum that was adopted into an after-school program. And that's when Hip Hop Saves Lives really took off. Educating kids about social issues through the works of humanitarians. Kind of like the same thing the song I did for Charity Water. I wanted, kids to do that for other humanitarians locally, statewide, nationally, and internationally. And get kids to have this experience of studying and understanding about, great community leaders that benefit, the world and help make it a better place, but also rap and sing and dance about it to celebrate it and kind of spread the word, So that was the main kind of, run of Hip Hop Saves Lives, was teaching at schools, detention centers, a lot of detention centers in New York City, libraries, community centers, homeless teen shelters, which shouldn't actually be in the same sentence, but it is.
Yes.
So anywhere in New York City where kids were having a tough time, I got a phone call and they wanted our services.
So we imagine that after last summer and specifically the murder of George Floyd, you would have felt like it was time to go ahead and double down your efforts. And so how did his death affect you and specifically your work?
First I crafted a song called New Negro Spiritual.
Yeah.
Old Negro spirituals were songs that, Black Americans sung during slavery, during Jim Crow, to get them through the day, get them through the hard times. Mm-hmm. And I kind of needed a song like that with the George Floyd situation. So I crafted a song called New Negro Spiritual, and that was just kind of my introduction to a new project called I Am Black American, where it's basically researching, going through the 400 years of, African Americans being here in the States and kind of digging up 1,000,001 different unsung heroes and crafting songs and breathing life, into their work, into their service, into their messages. So that's where I am now. That's the new curriculum. I am crafting songs for that myself right now. I have about 4 songs. And then it's going to be on a master website. And I'm launching a website called I Am Black American. That's in the works now. But my goal is to market it towards teachers. So we can have a much better experience with Black History Month and go beyond Black History Month.
Absolutely. Yeah.
As of now, we are, the Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and, things like that. But there's so much more. And so I Am Black America. This curriculum was birthed out of the George Floyd.
Love that. What do you enjoy the most about working with kids? Because it's obvious in your videos that you're working with kids that are little kids from, grade 4 all the way through students that are in college. And it seems like you have no limit to the terms of the kids you want to go ahead and reach. So what do you enjoy most about working with kids?
Well, I explain to people that hip hop is the tool that I use to help educate the kids, to get them in the classroom, to get them to listen to the stories of these different humanitarians. But my main goal is to build kids' self-esteem, and that's what I enjoy most. And giving these kids an opportunity to rap and dance and perform and write lyrics, it gives them a boost to their creative sides. And, being creative on a regular basis in school and seeing yourself get better and better and hearing your peers saying, wow, that was really good. And seeing them grow and progress in the arts has proven to spill over into the classroom. So for me, it's to build their self-confidence, to build their self-esteem. And once, there's a kid in Uganda who was a friend of mine, and he was a breakdancer, and he said, poverty to me is low self-esteem, because with high self-esteem, you can achieve anything. So that's my goal, is to build self-esteem in these kids.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about one of your latest projects working around the issue of mass incarceration. And if anyone has listened to this podcast for any extended period of time, I think that this is a massive issue when it comes to education. It has huge connections to education and public education. We know, for example, that predominantly black districts in large cities aren't getting the same funding as suburban districts full of, wealthy white people. There's unbelievable funding inequality in U.S. public education. The end result, as you would know, is that this turns into what we refer to as the school to prison pipeline. And the U.S. has the largest prison population in the world and a for-profit prison system that relies on mandatory minimums and this pipeline in order to continue. It's a business. Putting kids in jail is a business. And this, of course, is all rooted in systemic racism. So I guess the first part of this question is about the kids, because I think that this is the part that kills me the most, is that I think that the way that this systemic racism plays out, it actually absolutely destroys kids' lives. So, and I know that you've seen this and been around this firsthand. So, how does this mass incarceration impact kids' lives?
On so many levels. Obviously, the first level is having parents incarcerated. With mass incarceration, we have in the United States about 2.7 million children who have a parent in prison.
That's a staggering number. That's
it's bigger than some countries.
2.7 million.
And I've worked with kids who've had a parent in prison, and their insecurity that they have around that issue, the abandonment feeling that they have around that issue. And then there's also studies that talk about the probability of that child following in their parents' footsteps. When I was teaching incarcerated kids, I remember talking to one kid, and he said, "My younger brother is locked up. I'm locked up. My older brother's locked up, and my dad's in jail." And hearing these stories, over and over again, I realized going to prison is almost like a family trait. Just like going to college is a family trait. Going to prison is a family trait. Mm-hmm. And, if your dad gets locked up at a young age and you don't have that supervision and you have that kind of, emotional, scars and depression over it. And it's often that you repeat those mistakes, So for me, I wanted to see what I could do to try to break that cycle. So we developed this thing, me and a friend of mine, called BB Fly, which is a hip-hop apparel line. And what we want to do is work with kids who have a parent in prison. And through our research, we realized that the majority of these parents are between 100 and up to 500 miles away from their child. Yeah. And if you're low income, traveling a couple hundred miles is really, really hard to do.
Virtually impossible.
So a lot of these kids go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, even more, without ever seeing their parent in prison, mom or dad. So we wanted to kind of work to fill that void. And right now we're working to fund monthly trips for children in Brooklyn to visit their incarcerated parent. An effort to sustain that parent-child relationship, and an effort for that child to not feel that huge void, the abandonment. And also, we feel if that relationship can be sustained, they won't have the mindset of going out to the streets. They'll understand the impact from their parent being behind bars and consistently seeing that, even though it's kind of nurturing the relationship, but having to constantly go there and see their parent behind bars. I don't want to make that same mistake. I don't want to end up there,
Trying to break the cycle in a bunch of different ways. because this has an effect on the family as a whole as well. And, we know it's, and this year is the best example. This last year and a half or whatever. I mean, what is time these days? But this last period of time during COVID where, we've really realized the impact that the family unit has on the education of the kids. And I mean, it's happening everywhere. It's happening in my family, and it's happening in a lot of people's families where people have to work different jobs and juggle their work while their kids are sitting on laptops at the kitchen table or whatever. And, mass incarceration where, one of the, child rearers is in jail. Has a massive impact on the family unit and their education, does it not?
Absolutely. And, you're dealing with that loss of finances, you're dealing with that loss of structure, and then you're dealing with the depression that comes with it of that child losing that parent. So there's a lot of different factors in there. And kids are embarrassed to say, yeah, my mom is locked up or my dad's locked up. And so there comes that, the kid kind of shuts down, doesn't communicate as much, so there's a lot of factors that go into this mass incarceration. And there's a funny, a statistic that I had read that if you're a black male and you don't graduate from high school, in the United States, there's a 70% chance that you're going to end up spending some time in jail. So
another stag, like that's another staggering number. Like that is just, it's astonishing. Don't even know what to say. It's an unbelievable statistic.
Yeah.
Chad, how can our audience connect with you, either online, social media wise, and can you guide us to your website to be able to go ahead and investigate further and learn more about what you just finished talking to us about?
Right. So our website is bbfly.live, which is .liv. And yes, that is our new apparel line that's in response to mass incarceration. We are very lucky to have some hip hop celebrities that signed on board and wrote some rhymes to help further the movement. So I definitely want to shout out DMC from Run DMC, the legendary group, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was actually the first celebrity to write the rhyme. So just getting him on board really got us going and gave us some weight to anchor us down and get moving.
Amazing. Chad Harper, thanks so much, man, for joining us. This was eye-opening and fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
This is Ava Gay Blackford, another facilitator within the Teach SDGs community.
I believe that education is the most powerful force to encourage human rights and dignity, to wipe out poverty and strengthen sustainability, to build a better future for all. I think others should join this community because it creates a support network for members and serves as a global gathering place for teachers to share stories and support one another as we all figure out what learning looks like during the current global pandemic.
To access hundreds of resources about the global goals and to connect with almost 1,000 educators around the world, join the free Teach the Global Goals community. Visit go.participate.com/global goals to get started. Thanks for listening to OnEducation. My name is Glen Irvin. My co-host is Mike Washburn. OnEducation is part of the On Podcast Media Network. You can listen to this show and many others by great educators like Monica Burns, Mike Matera, Tisha Richmond, and many more by visiting onpodcastmedia.com. Want to get in touch with us? Check out our website, oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Mike is at Mr. Washburn on Twitter, and I can be found on Twitter at IrvSpanish. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. We're also on Instagram at oneducationpod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we would be thrilled if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost. This helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Participate, for supporting us. Check out participate.com to learn more about them. Thanks as always for listening, stay awesome, and see you soon.